Hey everybody, Asher here, back with more Kerbal Space Program, where we are picking up in our first episode since the last live stream, and you can see that I've picked up a few things since then. We still have the moon cheese orbiting about, and you can see that I've picked up a few missions, specifically one to have a probe going in an equatorial orbit around the moon, and then you'll see that I actually have another one. Let's go ahead and clean up all these debris. I'll do that in just a minute, actually, because I have some fancy debris flying around here. Other thing is that I have another thing to put a satellite in a polar orbit, but we're not going to be flying any of our old missions today. In fact, we're going to be flying a new one here. Do I have any debris sitting around here? Sometimes I do. Alright, this is the Moon Exploder. For those of you who watched the stream or saw the VODs, you may have noticed that I had some issues kind of iterating and reiterating different things to go into space. I think this has what it takes to make it to the moon. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to be taking Jeb, that's it, and we're going for a landing. Win this video right now. Let's talk about the features of this vehicle. So we have asparagus staging, which for those of you who are not familiar with what asparagus staging is, it is an efficient way to have your rockets burn fuel evenly, feeding fuel from the outside tanks first all the way to the middle. It's something that modern rocketry doesn't really quite have in, except for preliminary stages. It is technically more efficient, but there's a lot of calculations that goes into it. Fortunately, Kerbal Space Program is a little simpler here. But we have the outside most engines go first, then they ditch, then the next, then the next, then the next. Then the second stage, and you'll see that all 9 of these rockets will fire simultaneously. Then in the mid-orbit transfer stage, or suborbital transfer stage, I may have overdone it here, but I've put 4 hammers for RT-10 solid boosters. Maybe I only need the flea, the RT-5 instead. But this is going to try and give me the extra oomph because I don't want my LV-909s to really have to do a lot of work until we are out in space beyond the atmosphere. And I did add, for those of you who may have seen the end of the stream, or the end of the last video, an extra fuel tank in the middle to try and feed into these. So fuel lines make a significant difference. So I'm going to go ahead and fly this. We're just going to dive right in. We have the usual assortment of science experiments here. We have the usual assortments of solar panels, but more importantly, we have Jebediah at the helm while our other people are off doing touristy things or ferrying tourists. We are just flying in the sky. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we are flying with Jebediah, and I just want to go ahead and demonstrate a kind of design flaw in this vehicle first. We'll have the SAS on for this one, but I'm just going to start it up at max thrust. We're going to see what happens when we do things that we're supposed to do with gravity turns here. So we're just going to go veer to the right just a little bit just to try and get that started. It's best practice to do that. Now I'm already carrying extra weight up here, so this is not going to be as good at getting in the different stage. But I've already messed up my asparagus staging. You got to watch your liquid fuel as it goes down here, but you'll see we are gliding pretty well. I do have winglets strategically placed, but then when we do this, because I'm doing the gravity turn here, we are now out of control. And we did lose a substantial number of engines, all because it collided with each other. And Jebediah is still pretty excited, and I didn't put any escape module here, so let's just go ahead and look here. We have the fuel engine colliding with something else, and this is completely from the we have a beautiful corkscrew there, actually. This is completely from the just engines themselves, so this staging is not happening like it's supposed to at all. We're not getting to the moon that way. So let's revert to launch. I know some people may be a little irritated that I revert to launch so much in this series, but damn it, we're going to do it anyway. Because I know what this rocket needs and what it's supposed to do, and it's supposed to... Unfortunately, it's one where I won't be able to gravity turn until this stage is gone, because this is the problem one. If I was using the wider decouplers, it may not collide, but I'm using the narrower ones. Yeah, it's going to be fun with Rockamax boosters if I can't actually do the same thing. So let's go ahead. Let's look at the map view, get that straightened out. Let's get our fuel straightened up. This should make it to the moon. I don't know if it'll make it to the moon and back, but you know what? Our goal is to land Jeb on the moon. We can figure it out if we need a rescue mission. Not the first time Kerbals have ever had to be rescued from other bodies. So 3, 2, 1, launch. Good start. Now we're not going to do our gravity turn yet. Well, that wind is just going that way all of a sudden. Yeah, that's interesting. Alright, so we're watching our fuel gauge. We're not going to start our gravity turn until the second stage is gone. So there's 1. And I'm going to slow down my ascent here in just a little bit, but not until, just because I want to burn a little bit more efficiently through the lower atmosphere. I don't know if that's still really an issue with the new atmospheric model, but we're going to do it anyway. until I find out otherwise. Okay, that's not good. That didn't happen before. Look at that. It's just all very happy. Alright. So, let's try this again. 3, 2, 1, launch. And everything's just flying to the side again. Like I said, we're going to try and keep around 150 meters per second. That's actually the first time that when I wasn't doing a gravity turn that actually happened. So, see, these things get kicked off to the side. So we're going to stay around 150 here early. And we'll go back to a more substantial burn as we get higher in the atmosphere. I'd really hate to have to redesign this whole rocket just because I just wanted to make sure that I could get something that was actually kind of viable here instead of exploding. Ah, it's good enough for me. Alright, let's start our gravity turn. I mean, when things collide into each other, it's not fantastic, but we didn't lose anything that we needed. So let's go ahead and get the gravity turn going a little more. We can increase our thrust just a little bit because we are getting out of the initial soup mix of the atmosphere. I do not mind this pitching very much. Although it'd be nice if we had a little bit more stable here. So there we go. Better gravity turn at this altitude. We'll make it, I think. How are we doing on the apoapsis here? Not fantastic. We need to really crank up the throttle. And that's kind of the trick with this one. As soon as these go, I'm going to be staging the other solid boosters. And that'll be the first time I've done this, so I don't actually know at all what's going to happen there. So that'll be part of the fun, right? We just don't want to go on a ballistic trajectory too badly. So still experimenting on camera, because that's what you do in Kerbal Space Program, right? And then fire the boosters! Holy cow! That's so Kerbal. What is this doing to our altitude? That is what I like to see. And it's not actually overheating my other parts, so that's fantastic. That is exactly working as intended. Beautiful. I had a good idea and it worked. I had a good idea and we are actually 1 minute away from the apoapsis. We are in good shape. That was beautiful. So we're just going to fix this just a little bit. I don't know why it's working. We're actually in orbit mode now, so that's great. We'll keep the SAS on and just get a little bit of a rotation here. Try and get the nav ball slowly but surely back to where we go. The thing that I ran into before was having to really burn these LV909s in the 50,000 meter range of the atmosphere. And that's not what you want to do if you can avoid it. These things have a beautiful thrust-to-weight ratio. They actually are one of the most efficient engines in the game. Especially for their size, they are just not powerful enough on their own to get you out of the atmosphere. But you can see right here, those solid boosters, they're going down. All of these things are going down. But still, we are on track, which is fantastic. I think, guys, we are going to be going to the moon, and maybe we shall see some cats or something. I don't know. As soon as we get to like 70,000 meters. I'm just going to be burning straight to the moon. I'm going to be burning straight to a landing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts here. But I will take this to the bank. Let's go ahead and just fire the other engines. Let's see here. Because we're going to be at about 70,000 meters. Let's add a maneuver node here. How much delta V do we need to get a good orbit here? To get an actual orbit from right around here. Yeah, let's stop this for a second. So to get an actual orbit, we need about 12,000 more delta V. We need to be burning pretty much now. So that's okay. That's exactly what we're going to do. Like I said, all I wanted was to have a little bit of extra fuel to not have to do a bunch of transfer burning there. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Our apoapsis is about 70,000 meters. And we're burning a little early, but that's okay. Whoa. Okay, SAS needs to be on. It's like, why are we burning down? We do not want to be burning down. Alright. You notice I have the Science Junior on the bottom of this thing. That's just how that's going to go. But, let's see here. We are just a teensy-weensy bit away from being in orbit. Said, very pleased with how those solid boosters go. I don't even care. It may not have saved me that much delta V with having to carry on that extra weight and those working in the outside of the atmosphere, because they're not as efficient outside the atmosphere, I don't think. But you know what? It looked cool, and there was lots of fire. So that's... You want to just light up the daylight sky when you're going to the moon, right? There's Kerbal Space Center right there. You can barely see it. There's the fake Space Center. There's an unexplored island that the Kerbals are just seeing for the first time from space. So we got to actually watch this map. I can probably go ahead and turn off the maneuver node, to be honest, because we're just going for an orbit here. I'm not going for a pretty orbit. I'm actually not going for an orbit at all. I just want to make sure that if for some reason I crash and burn, that I'm actually crashing and burning appropriately. Alright, so to the moon, let's set as a target. Going to be right about here. Add a maneuver. I think I hit that a little off. Like I said, we're just going pretty much for a collision course. Nothing fancy. I just want to try and be as efficient as I can. So we can actually lay off the delta V. It usually takes about 800 to get to the moon, and this is just supposed to be a rough guesstimate for a close approach. So if we go like this, we can probably... Okay, we don't want to do that. Let's zoom out a little. Yeah, this needs to be right here. That's better. That's much better. All right, so we can actually dial this down a little bit. Get a little closer. That's going to be a little further away. But important thing is we'll be able to make our burn and know. So we have a 52-second burn that we're hitting in about 2 minutes. This is such better shape than I was in before. Yes, my big tank is almost expired, but believe you me, that's much better than on the live stream where I was just killing these things to even get into orbit. So, iteration and reiteration. We're playing, we're learning. Jebediah, do you have anything to say with your crew report? I don't know if I have much in the way of contracts other than the explore the moon, so nothing yet. Jeb is just like, I am ready to go. And that's what our orbit would look like if we just let the moon gravity us around. So we're not gonna worry about that too much. Let's just go ahead and zoom forward a little bit. We will start our burn at about the 25-second mark, because you want to put your burn evenly on both sides of the maneuver node as best you can. Good, important, best practice. Scott Manley, if you're not familiar with his channel, actually has a lot of very good demonstration videos that is very good for teaching. He has the knowledge to really go into detail, but at the same time the acumen to explain complicated things in a way that anyone can understand or make sense of, which actually in my mind is a sign of someone who's smarter than just someone who can explain complicated things. I remember having plenty of professors in college who would tell me, or just, I could tell they were brilliant, I could tell they were great teachers, but they just didn't know how to really teach it, if that makes sense. It was more along the lines of they just couldn't break it down for a way that was simple. Everything was a bit more dense. You try and ask them to say something another way, and they would just put it another way. We're actually just about there. So, whoop, 400,000, 3, 2, there we go. Good enough for me, because we're going to be adjusting our course anyway once we get into intercept mode. Let me go ahead and quick save in case bad things happen. Still paranoid from losing my power during the live stream the last time. But there's the moon. We are good on fuel, I would say. I don't know about good on fuel for a return trip, but we're good on fuel to at least get there. And that counts for something. So, bye-bye. We actually got most of our orbital science from the moon cheese already, so we're just going to kind of fast forward here. Hello, Kerbal Space Lines. There's everything flying around Urban. What the hell is Urban? Around Kerbin, and we are just going to go ahead and say, here is the moon. We're going to have an encounter right about now. And yes, that encounter just means we're going to be in its gravitational field. So, anytime. There we go. All right. Hello, moon. I did not fear you at all. Okay, now what we need to do here is we're going to be making a dayside landing. I hate landing on night. In fact, the original moon missions, as I'm sure you've heard me or someone else say before, intentionally landed on the kind of afternoon horizon so that it's easier to see a shadow. We're going to kind of go for the same thing here. In fact, if I burn a retrograde right now, it's actually way more efficient to do it the further out you are to make it happen. So that seems like a decent place to land. I'll tell you that without atmosphere, first off, your lack of atmospheric new models does not scare me, Moon. In fact, the patch 1.0 will not save you. Because I cannot burn up on reentry for the moon because there's no reentry to burn up on. But more importantly is that we're going to be landing, like I said, kind of towards the afternoon side, but a little bit, but not totally on the afternoon side because I still want to be able to see pretty well. But if I burn out here, it's a lot more efficient to actually get into a landing course than going closer. So we actually, you know what? We could actually be landing into where Kerbal is eclipsing the sun, so that'd be pretty neat. If we can pull that off. I don't think we will. Let's just go ahead and do this. Collision course activate. So there's the periapsis dissipating, dissipating, dissipating. Okay, guys, this is it. We have committed to the landing. Looks good to me. In fact, you know what? What does that surface detail look like? The moon is going to orbit a little bit, and I'd rather not crash into that crater, but that may be what we do. We'll figure it out. I have 4 landing legs. What's the worst that can happen? My ship crashes and explodes, and Jebediah has to survive for himself, going in the moon caves, eating moon cheese, and catching moon flies. I don't know. There's a storybook that needs to be written there, I think. But there's the moon. It's closer. Can we actually see? No. Moon cheese is on the other side. For all they know, they don't know that Jeb's coming right now. And in fact, we're going to be landing up here away from the big crater, so that's probably just as well. So we're looking at about landing right around there. That's good enough for me. Now, as we get closer to the surface here, there's not a lot of point of burning off too much velocity this early. We're just going to let gravity do its course because we're going to have to budget ourselves to fight gravity anyway. And I really don't want to fall straight into the moon. So we're at about what? See, with the rotation, we're going to kind of miss some of this. We're at about 100,000 meters. Let's actually go. Well, wait, we can actually use the in-flight altimeter, and we can see that we are still pretty high up. About 100,000. So if we slow it down just a little bit, you can see we have switched now to surface mode, which is very important. And I'm going to try and quick save here, just because, once again, I have a feeling that something's going to interrupt me here in a second. And also because I really want to demonstrate, especially for those of you who are new to Kerbal Space Program, what it's like to land on the moon. So if that means I have to quick save, quick load, which is F5 for quick save, F9 for quick load, there's no shame in that. But the first thing we're going to do is start actually killing our velocity a little bit. Right now we are on track to land in this crater. I don't want to, because we risk hitting the rim right there. And that rim will pretty much knock us on our side. So we're going to start by burning our fuel here. Keep in mind that we are at 450 some units of fuel, and we have to shed a lot of velocity. I have a feeling Jeb's going to need a rescue mission. I don't think I'm going to have enough fuel to get him back up, but that's okay. I have some new plans for things that are different than last time than just putting a rescue mission into landing. But we're going to go ahead and slow down. That's pretty good. So about 240. And we're going to let ourselves fly a little bit closer. It's going to feel a little suicide burning here in a second. But if you're really not sure about this, and this reminds me of my first Duna landing, which I actually still have the video up somewhere on my channel. Maybe I'll link an annotation here in a minute. It's like, I was just so cautious. Anytime you're not sure, you got to shed the velocity at some point anyway. And because of the force of gravity, it doesn't really matter when you do it. Okay, it does matter. The most efficient time to be burning this is closer to the surface. But if you're not skilled at this game, and I'm not particularly as skilled as I like to think I am, sometimes doing a suicide burn so close to the surface when things are out of whack is pretty scary. Also, another thing that's very important, and I almost forgot to do, press G to activate your landing legs. Yay! Also test to make sure your landing legs will actually fit the profile. Right now we are looking to land beside that little divot. I think we may actually hit the one down there that's in front of it. Alright, so 200 some meters. I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit closer. Not too much closer. I think like 10,000 is going to be close enough. What's our altimeter say? Altimeter's still going a little crazy, but that's okay. At about 10,000, we're going to start burning some velocity again. So see, we're now at surface mode here. Could actually probably do a crew report right now. Let's multitask. Crew reports. Nothing new. Okay. Alright, Jeb. Let's fire those engines to full, and then the other thing you'll notice, I don't have the SAS on. All I'm trying to do here is to get my velocity pretty low, but you also have to track that maneuver node here hard. You got to stay on the center of it, or else you're going to have issues. So let's see, our altimeter's still not doing a ton yet. So I'm just going to do a light burn to see if we can slow down just a little bit. So I just don't want to go crashing into here. Our radar altitude is actually starting to drop, so that's good news. Can we find where our shadow is? Very important to go into settings and turn on shadows here. So there we go. 4,000. We're just going to drop it back down to 50 meters per second. See where we are. Okay, we are actually about 500 meters from landing, and there's my shadow. We've got to burn this fast. And that's why afternoon sight is very important to do this on, because let's zoom out a little bit here. So we have our shadow, and you want to actually do kind of a light burn to nestle yourself down slowly but surely. Now remember, your landing legs, as long as you're not using the teeny tiny micro struts, can actually handle some pretty good force. So you don't have to zero yourself out for landing, although it makes life a little easier if you do. But yeah, you just want to use your shadow, guide yourself here. This is why it's so important to land somewhere flat and kind of try and stay upright in the middle. Okay, my shadow disappeared because we're kind of at a slope. And if you burn a little bit too much, you'll notice how light I'm burning here. If you burn a little too much, then you'll actually start flying again, and you don't want to do that. So let's see, we're falling, we're falling, we're falling. Remember, worst case scenario is that we just crash and Jebediah rips some pepperoni, but I think we're going to do it. Just slow down, speed up. We actually are on a slope. Okay. Okay, we're on a slope. Oh, that's some new dust effects. That's exciting. And we have one landing gear down. We landed! Those micro struts did their thing. All right. And they're not broken, which is even more exciting. So, Jebediah, crew report. We have a lot of science we can do. We're in the moon's midlands. Let's go ahead and transmit that data. And you're going to see we actually get all the contracts completed. And because we have solar panels, we'll be able to get that back up. So contract complete. You've successfully explored the moon. Get your money. How much money do we have? A lot of money. That's exciting. We'll get there in a second. I just broke the menus a little bit. Yay! Transmit and recover scientific data and land on the moon. Those are all complete. I was debating doing this with a probe, but I thought, hey, why? Now the other thing is that we do have the materials bay down here. I did put it on the bottom just because that's where it worked out best. And how much fuel do we have in these canisters? Not a lot. We may be able to return here. At least we should be able to get into orbit at least, and that'll be enough to get a rescue here. So the fine dust of the moon is intermixed with some samples. Your sneaking suspicion they're never going to be able to separate at the lab again, which is close to what we're doing here. So we have that, and we have our other experiments as well. Go ahead and open the door. So, log the pressure data. We could actually turn the display off. We're in a vacuum. What do you know? The atmosphere gauge is setting motionless. Perhaps you should tap it a few times to be sure. That's 48 science just for saying what we already know about vacuums in space. So, observing the mystery goo, we can actually do one of these observations on the flight out. The goo seems to be less dense here. Now, what some people who are more ambitious than me might be able to do, and what I might do later, is actually make a vehicle that pops around and gets more science as we go around here. What's the temperature display? 268.12. That's actually very impressive because we're in the sunlight. Actually, that is a beautiful shot. We'll have to get that for the flag shot. So log the temperature display. Here's temperature from the environs, and more importantly, EVA. EVA report. This is from space just above. So let's go ahead and keep the data board to put it in. Then EVA one more time. I don't think I can take soil samples yet. So, but what we are going to do here is just spacebar to grab and hoppity hop. We have landed on the moon, Jebediah. Let's actually get you jumping because he's so excited. And with the landing complete, I'm going to have to cut this into 2 parts because it went a little long. So we'll pick up and see, can Jeb return home? This is Asher. See you next time.